3.2 exponents. When we're working with exponents, we have these terms. It's called the base and the exponent. So the base is always that big number, and that exponent is that little power that we see. So for example, if we have something like 5 to the 4th power, the 5 is the base and the 4 is our exponent. If we look at the first example, we are writing each expression in exponential form. So the number or the term that repeats is what's going to get that exponent. So if we look at example A, we have 6 times 6 times 6 times 6. There's 4 6's there. So our base is going to be a 6, and the exponent is going to be a 4 because that 6 appears 4 times. For B, we have A times A times A times A times A times A. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 A's. So this is going to be A as our base, and then 6 as the exponent, so A to the 6th power. For C, we have negative 2 times P times Q times 3 times P times Q times P. So those numbers, that negative 2 and that negative 3, we want to multiply together to get negative 6. And then the P, there's 1, 2, 3 of them, so it's going to be P to the 3rd power. And then their Q, we have 1, 2, so that's Q to the 2nd power. So negative 6, P cubed, Q squared. For example 2, it asks us to find the area of this rectangle. When we find the area of something, we're going to multiply the length and the width. So this would be 3x times x. So there's 2 x's there. We're going to keep the 3, and it's going to be x squared. So 3x squared. For our next example, we have to evaluate x cubed if x is equal to negative 5. So this is going to be negative 5 cubed. So whatever you're plugging in or inputting in for that variable, you're going to you can put parentheses around it to make sure that that negative stays with that number in this case. So this is the same thing as negative 5 times negative 5 times negative 5. We know that a negative times a negative times a negative is going to give us a negative. And the 5 times 5 is 25 times negative 5 is going to give us negative 125. If we are simplifying, for example, for A, we have negative 3 to the 4th power. Now that negative out in front is like saying negative 1 times 3 to the 4th power. And this is the same thing as negative 1 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. We know 3 times 3 is 9, so this is the same thing as negative 1. Oops, let's change the color. Negative 1 times 9 times 9. We know that 9 times 9 is 81. And negative 1 times 81 is negative 81. For B, we have negative 3 in parentheses, and then it's raised to the 4th power. So this is the same thing as negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. So we have an even number of negatives, so our answer is going to be positive. And 3 times 3 is 9, and 9 times 9 is 81. For C, we have 1 plus 5 squared, so we have to do what's in parentheses first. The 1 plus 5 is 6, and 6 squared is a 36. For D, we have 1 plus 5 squared. The 5 is the only thing that has that exponent of that 2, so this is the same thing as 1 plus 5 times 5. Remember, order of operations, you want to do the 5 times 5 first, so that's 1 plus 25, which is 26. For example 5, we're evaluating 2a plus b squared if a is equal to 3 and b is equal to negative 2. So we're plugging these in. So we're going to have 2 times a, which is 3, plus b, which is negative 2, squared. Think order of operations. Do the 2 times 3 first, which is 6, plus negative 2. Oops, this should have been a bracket, then 2. There we go. So then with the 6 times negative 2, that's going to be squared. Oops. So 6 plus negative 2 gives us a 4, and 4 squared is 16. For example 6, we have x plus y cubed all over 2x plus y, and x is 2, y is 5. So plug these values in. we're going to have parentheses x minus 5 cubed all over 2 times, that x is a 2. So then we have 2 times 2 plus 5. Okay, so order of operations here, if we do what's in our parentheses first, the 2 minus 5 is negative 3 to the third power all over 2 times 2, which is 4, plus 5. The negative 3 to the third power is going to be the same thing as negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. All over 4 plus 5 is 9. The negative 3 times negative 3 is 9. 9 times negative 3 is negative 27. Put that over 9, and this is going to equal negative 3. If we look at some extra examples here, for 1 through 12, we're writing each expression in exponential form. So I'm going to change my color here so that way. For 1, we have x times x times x times x, which is x to the 4th. For 2, we have a times a times a times a times a. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is going to be a to the 5th power. For 3, we have n times y times y times n. So with these, you want to put them in alphabetical order, so it's going to be n squared y squared. For 4, we have c times y. So c times c is c squared times y is just c squared y. For number 5, I'm going to rewrite this so it's not so thick. Okay, so for 5, we have 2 times p times 5 times p. So 2 times 5 is 10. P times p is p squared, so 10p squared. For 6, we have a times 3 times a times a times 2 times a. So the 3 times the 2 is 6. And then there's 1, 2, 3, 4a, so 6a to the 4th power. For 7, we have negative r times negative r. Negative r times negative r is a positive r squared. Remember, a negative times a negative is a positive, which is where those negatives go. For 8, we have negative r times r. A negative times a positive is a negative, and then r times r is r squared, so negative r squared. For 9, we have negative 2 times b times negative 4 times b. So negative 2 times negative 4 is a positive 8, and b times b is b squared. For 10, we have 2 times k times negative 4 times k. So 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. K times k times k is k cubed. For 11, we have a times a times a times 3 times b times b times b. So the 3 gets multiplied by nothing other than the 3 by itself. The a we have 3 of, so that's a cubed. B we have 3 of, so that's b cubed. So 3a cubed b cubed. For 12, they give us a times b times 5 times b times b times a. The 5, there's no other number other than that, so we're just going to rewrite it. A times a, 1, 2, 3 a's, so that's a to the 3rd power. B, there's 3 of, so that's b to the 3rd power. So 5a cubed b cubed. For 13, we are simplifying. So we have 2 to the 5th power, which is the same thing as 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. We know that 2 times 2 is 4. So that's the same thing as 4 times 4 times 2. 4 times 4 is 16, times 2 gives us 32. So for number 14, we have 5 squared, which is just 5 times 5, and that is 25. For 15, they give us 5 times 2 cubed. The 2 cubed is 8, so 5 times 8 is 40. For 16, we have parentheses 5 times 2 cubed. The 5 times 2 is 10, and 10 cubed is 1,000. For 17, they give us parentheses negative 2 to the 4th power. So this 4 is even. This is going to turn into a positive, and 2 to the 4th power is the same thing as 4 times 4, which is 16. For 18, they give us a negative 2 to the 4th power. So this is negative 1 times 2 to the 4th power. The 2 to the 4th power we said was 16, so negative 1 times 16 is negative 16. For 19, we have parentheses 2 plus 3 to the 2nd power. So this 2 plus 3 is 5, and 5 to the 2nd power is the same thing as 5 times 5, which is 25. And lastly, for 20, we have 2 plus 3 squared. That 3 squared we have to do first. That 3 is positive, so we do 3 times 3, which is 9. So 2 plus 9 gives us 11.